What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Maverick here today with another episode of Ya Boy Kongming. So, I've been spending the last couple of weeks trying to catch up to the live episodes, so this is the first time I'm doing a video directly on the same day the episode drops, so hopefully there will be some new viewers here as well. Welcome. Anyways, back to the anime at hand. So, last episode was a little bit slower. You could even say slice of life-esque. Apparently it was more of an anime original. I guess they were trying to stretch out the anime because they couldn't quite fit the story arcs within, the 12 episode format. So a bit unfortunate, I guess. It did kind of feel like non-committed, right? Even though I do love these sort of slice of life episodes in musical anime as well. Like I love K-On!, I love Bandori and all that, but it just felt like there was absolutely zero development, right? Like Kabe, sure, he had a little bit of a character development, but for the stuff that Eiko was going through, we didn't really get to see her evolution or any of her deeper thoughts regarding the situation. We didn't even really get to see her and Nanami really get into a deeper heart-to-heart, right? Sure, they interacted, they had fun with each other, but it was kind of on their superficial level. So anyways, in this episode, I'm expecting us to go back. Maybe Nanami will reveal her true identity to Eiko, and of course, will Eiko finally find her voice and finally start recording her song, right? I have a sneaking suspicion that probably they will find the answer in this episode and then maybe record it by the end of this episode, but we'll probably not be able to see it until any sort of grand finale, grand conclusion that the anime gives us. So with that in mind, let's get into the episode. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Alright, Azalea, alright. I mean, sure, that's like, again, a reference from... I'm actually not quite sure if that's what happened historically. I assume something like that happened. I mean, actually, all the different generals and higher up people from the different kingdoms, they had some relationships with each other. There are cases where even, like, for instance, even Kongming, his family is Juga, right? And the Juga family actually had many people in the various different kingdoms. Like, there was quite I believe there were, like, he had a brother or a half brother and also a cousin, like, who were quite prominent within Wei and within U as well. And like, I think there was even a saying at that time regarding the Druga family or brothers, half brothers, cousins, whatever you want to call them. A case where they say that the Shu Kingdom got the dragon because one of Kongming's given name or like titles, if you want to say it, is Wolong, which literally means like sleeping dragon. And then the second more prominent one would be the one in U, which is they say that they got the tiger of the Druga family. And then in Wei, they say they got the dog, which kind of sounds a little bit insulting, but it was supposed to be like more of a compliment to the Druga family. Have you guys all heard of, like, the original of the opening? Like, which one do you guys prefer? Honestly, I would say I prefer the Japanese version, but maybe I'm just biased, right? Because I do believe that Japanese is a very beautiful language. Alright, regardless though. Oh, picking up directly after the last episode. I assume this is probably her manager, producer. Yep. Yeah, producer slash manager.
そんな奴とは二度と関わるな。ミーティングの時間までには戻れ。いいな。
Or the populace. Oh, they're actually already starting. I still feel like she's singing in a very R&B and styled manner, though. You gotta sing for the people, for the public, for the popular.
エイコは自分らしく歌えてるって。プリンジジイより私を信じて。ありがとう。そうだ。ちょっと気晴らしにどっか行こっか。気晴らし？お、孔明の服。
Oh, Sky Tower? Sky Square? Yep.
みんなマジでありがとう。まさかこんなに集まってくれる。
Okay, so I assume like the actual heart-to-heart and development will happen up in the observation deck.
いつもこの時間は仕事終わりで何もいいことなしだからな。そっか、大変だな。ちょっと待って。仕事終わりいいことなし。ささっちょ今2分だ。この前一つも踏んでないって言われたからよ。さりげない挑戦状、ありえない高専の。あ、すぐ踏み返してきた。ささっちょ、壁退治に仕掛けるなんてお前生意気だぞ。ごめんなさい、5年早い。お手洗いに行ってきます。すげえ、全然だ。
Alright.
何言ってんだ。これが俺。
Actually, I like this background music.
どうした？なんでもない。なんでもない。心配ない。俺の YouTube 人気がない。
That would actually be a pretty chill hip-hop beat. Oh.
私は何も考えてないかな。好きにやってるだけ。路上では。路上では？
What if when you're on stage?
まあ、プロかな。顔は出してないけど。やっぱり職人って感じする。スタジオミュージシャン？あ、有名なツアーメンバーとか？
She's right there!
やっぱりエイコには話しておきたいな。これが最後かもしれないから。何？
Oh, so the big reveal is just gonna be like that?
早く言っておけばよかったんだけど、エイコの前では素の自分でいたくて。じゃじゃーん。アイドルバンドアザリエのベースボーカル、クオンナナミでーす。なんてね。嘘。
She's gonna be, well, that's cool, right? If we know Eiko's... Oh, no?
ナナミンがアザリエ？嘘でしょ。だってイメージ全然違うし。最初は違ったんだ。
No, if honestly, if she didn't reveal like her name though, I would have never guessed that she was the lead singer. They look so different. 3-piece band.
人前で演奏したことないからちょっと不安だけど。そんなのみんな一緒。大丈夫だよ。
Although to have that heavy of a sound with only one guitar.
そういや君
Hmm.
私たちのバンド名本当だ練習に夢中で大事なこと忘れてたじゃあさ今から一人一つずつ案を出そうだったらナナミから出してよオッケー私はねバンド却下なんでバンドなの3人だからバンドはーいじゃあ私のいいナナミ、イチカ、双葉の名前から一文字取って、
I like.
双葉はなんかあるちょっと考えてたのがあるんだけど、アザリエってどうかな
What's it supposed to mean?
アザリエどういう意味花の名前なの。
Hmm.
で、この花言葉が青春の喜び。いいじゃん。高校の友達とバンドを組んで自分たちのやりたい音楽をやってた。いいね。めっちゃいい。デビューライブは文化祭のステージ。やば。マジで最高だった。
By the way, like Nanami is such a beauty though, which is quite important for the front man of the band, or I guess in this case front woman. Oh really?
私たちの高校生活は音楽が中心になった。で、卒業した後も音楽のためにって3人で一緒に上京して。そうだったんだ。まあ、上京したって言っても全然チャンスには恵まれなかったよね。ライブやっても全然人集まらないし。
You know, if they're music, like considering the situation in Japan right now, if you're good and you like upload to YouTube or something, like there's been a few girl rock bands that got popular when they were still in high school.
それでどんな音楽をやっていきたいんだ
それはもちろんロックです。聴いている心を激しく揺さぶるような。そうやっぱガツンとくる音楽をずっとやってきたんで。それとアザリエって青春の喜びって花言葉が由来なんです。だからやっぱりバンドを始めた時の心の高ぶりは表現していきたいっていうか。おお、双葉いいこと言うね。
くだらんやはり何も分かってないな結成してさ3人のライブハウスを半分も埋められないのやめてしまえそんな売れないバンド
なんであんたらそんな
Da da da.
最後まで聞けチャンスをやろうというんだ
チャンス。
俺の曲を歌えば2年以内にドームツアーをやらせてやる
ドーム2年以内に。
逆にこのチャンスを逃すならばお前らは一生売れないままだ
Mm.
言ってんだよ。ふざけんな。
玉磨かざれば光なしよく考えてみることだ
Mm.
呼び出しといて何様だよ。誰がおめえの曲なんて歌うかよ。私もあいつの曲嫌い。でも唐沢プロデュースの作品みんな売れてるよね。絶対チャンスは来るって。そうそううちらのやり方で頑張ろう。そうだよね。おー自分たちの音楽には自信があった。でもどうやったら売れるのか。
Upload to YouTube.
また自腹か。バイト増やさなきゃ。 金かかるしね。田舎帰んのだけはやだ。
In terms of high school bands like making the big leap to a major label, but also sort of switching up, my first thought is actually Girls Rock Band Revolution or Girls Rock Band Kakume. No, they kind of like reformed into, I think they're called Trident now. Again, I'm not sure if this, I don't really think this is a reference to that, but
それでいい。俺も昔は勘違いしていた。
hmm.
やりたいことをやって生きていけると。しかし、人を喜ばせてこそ対価が得られる。そんな当たり前。
By the way, the guy, this guy's haircut and whatnot, is this maybe a sort of like reference? I mean, that very classic British bob cut.
何この衣装。
それはアザリエの衣装。今日からお前たちはそれを着るんだ。
無理無理、ありえないって。ねえ、ナナミ。
I'll do it.
絶対に受ける。衣装も曲も振り付けもこちらの指示に従ってもらう。売れたければ着ろ。
マジかよ。
これもお前たちの衣装だ。今日からお前たちは新しいアザリエに生まれ変わる。
I do wonder, like, why he specifically asked them to hide their faces, though. Now, especially with Nanami, you would have thought that he would have tried to utilize her beauty as well. Although I guess having like being completely hidden to the public might be a marketing tactic in of itself.
ちょっと待って、どういうこと？
つまり次から演奏はエアで構わないと。
Oh,
その分パフォーマンスに集中し、
okay.
それを求めている。
So now they've turned more and more into an actual like idol group. Yeah. Instead of a rock band now.
ファンは激増。 CD やグッズも売れて、私たちは音楽一本でやっていけるようになれた。ただ、今月の振り込み見た？見た。私実家に食洗機送った。あのさ、さっきのライブだけど。うん。そういえば、私も新しい電子レンジ買っちゃった。マジで？いいじゃん。私も家電買い替えようかな。あれ、ナナミもう帰るの？うん。ちょっと気晴らしに歌ってくれ。
Although you would think, like, if you're not going to rely on them for their playing skills or their songwriting abilities
私は変わ
or
ってしまう。
whatnot,
だけどね。
you do have to wonder, like, why he is still insistent on putting these together as a team.
あの曲を歌いたくない。でも、アザリエはもう私たちだけのものじゃない。チームとして大きなお金が動いてるし、売ろうとしてくれているスタッフや来てくれるファンは裏切りたくない。ごめんね、黙ってて。
You could still do a solo or a side project as well, too, though.
サマーソニアの出場権をかけた10万いいね企画。私も参加してる。そっか、歌うまいもんね。
Alright, are you two gonna hug and make up or something?
そんな悩みを抱えてたんだ。私全然気がつかなかった。私ばっかり勇気をもらってた。だったら、よし、私歌う。ここで？私 私歌うから。
Wow, just like the perfect setting for a stage.
ナナミンだけじゃなくて、この町の人たちもみんな
Now that is picturesque.
私もたくさん悩んだよ。でも音楽が救ってくれた。だったら私の歌も誰かを救えるかもしれない。もしかしたら今のナナミンを救えるかもしれない。Everything seems to be alright. Cause you get me whispered up all night. Ooh, but I'm alone tonight. And I don't know how to stop keeping sight. I just wanna get you out of my mind. You don't know how much I love you, but you don't wanna be with me anymore. I'm still alive today. You are so far away, even though you have broken my heart, baby. I'm still alive today and miss you all day. I just so like not live without you.
Nice.
I don't know what to do with myself. Maybe I'm stronger than I think I understand it. 届け届けナナミンの心に。ナナミン、そうか、これがタミクさん。誰かのために歌う。そうなんだね。
Okay, that was a nice transition there, like into the actual background music.
エイコ、こんな歌い方できたんだ。
I definitely feel like, compared to before, she has more roundness to her voice, her vocals. Maybe not as much relying on sort of like, like less trying to show off technique and more. Obviously the lesson here is singing from the heart, right?
私はストリートで歌ってるナナミンが大好きだよ。エイコ。
No, you're late.
唐沢。ごめん。私行かなきゃ。うん。ナナミン。歌ありがとう。でも次会う時は敵同士かもね。頑張ろう、お互い。ナナミン、それじゃ。ナナミン、また一緒に歌おうよ。ナナミン。
Dude, don't ruin the moment like that. And were you spying on them all the way along? That's kinda sus, Kongming. I kid, I kid.
合ってるかどうかわかんないけど。タミクサだね。
populace. Or I guess you could also translate it as the masses.
さあ、新たな高みへと参りましょう。
Nice little episode here. Alright, I will see you guys after this. Alright guys, so this is the kind of development that I was hoping for in the last episode, right? So we did have it still in the end, this sort of a more heart-to-heart situation. I still feel like it was kind of condensed, if you will, but if this was how the original manga was, I guess we can't really complain too much about it, right? And, you know, the singing and all that, like, obviously it's fine. Although, I have to say, probably out of all the versions that I've heard Eiko sing so far, I think I still prefer the version she sang in episode 1. Like, it was softer, it definitely had not as heavy a feel of it. Obviously, the conditions are different, and so on and so forth, but I don't know, like, I was really impressed when Eiko sang this song back in episode 1. That's sort of like, that kind of, how do I explain this? Like, that sort of vulnerability in her voice, like, I thought really worked well with the specific song, and of course her guitar playing as well. It just fit that moment here. And you could argue that, like, sure, in this here, and while she was singing in the later episode, she definitely had a lot more power to it, right? But I guess they're trying to make her into more of a power pop singer, like, just like how, you know, her supposed idol Maria Diesel is. Again, probably a reference to Mariah Carey, not 100% sure, but, I don't know, like, her voice certainly does can do that. It's just that if I want to say, looking at her up to this point, right, following her and knowing her personality and whatnot, I still feel like the most quintessential Eiko out of all of this would still be the one that she sang back in episode 1. It still feels the most natural, the most Eiko to me. Am I the only one who thinks this way? Please do let me know, right? Obviously, you know, this is great as well, and kind of singing from the heart. Not really too much showy, too much flashiness. Just trying to pour her heart into it, and you know, when a singer does this well, right, you can literally close your eyes and imagine, like, the face that the singer is making while they are singing the song, right? So this is kind of like similar to that kind of situation. Though I would argue that even all the other versions up to this point were quite fine in their own way as well. But hey, whatever. You know, this is how it is, and she's found her voice some way or another, and yeah, we'll just have to get into, like, the grand finale arc to see what exactly is going to happen from there, right? Now, I'd like to use this moment to talk a little bit more about this particular Azalea situation, right? Obviously, there's not too many, like, Free Kingdom references here. I don't really think the story at the beginning, you know, the friendship between Guang and Azalea was really too much there's not really too much to add there, to be honest. So let's talk a little bit about this topic instead, which actually I also have a decent amount of knowledge in, because I happen to be a huge fan of the Japanese female rock band scene. So I love it. I always follow, like, new bands as much as possible, and you know, some of my favorite Japanese rock bands, like Bandmate, like Acharic Spin, are, you know, female rock bands. So I kind of sort of have a decent amount of knowledge here, and certainly, of course, the idea that you know, the story that Nanami has shown here isn't one that's particularly just applying to female rock bands, right? Like, any kind of music ad. This is a story as old as time, right? It's particularly for rock bands as well. You know, doing the music, that more authentic music, if you will, versus selling out. You know, selling out as much as one would hate the term. You know, it's particularly strongly associated with, like, punk acts, emo acts, stuff of that sort. I think that's kind of, you know, you can say what you will about it, because there's obviously always going to be some hardcore fans who's like, oh, I loved them before they went mainstream, and yada yada yada. But I still feel like for a lot of these most iconic bands, right, you definitely have to agree that they after they exploded in popularity, like, there is a certain level of detail and polish that happens to these bands once they do go mainstream or once they get signed by major labels. How more cleaner their production is, and tighter their songwriting is, and whatnot. So it is what it is. Obviously, it's like I said, it's not just applying to female rock bands, but obviously for female rock bands there is this other certain element of this as well, and which is the marketing appeal of it, right? Like, especially if you have members that look good, look cute, look beautiful, and it would obviously be great if they also had a great if they had great sex appeal as well. Obviously that can also combine into a package that sells, right? So especially in this case here, like Nanami, she is a natural beauty, right? And if we look at her Azalea stage uniform, we can clearly see that she has the assets as well. So there's definitely no denying that part there. But I just feel like this whole scenario is still sort of weird in a way, right? Because if you are going to be trying to produce a unit such as this, right, and you don't really care about the music they write, you don't care about their musicianship, then what's really left there is the other parts, and the other parts is how good they are at dancing. Do they have a personality or the stage presence, and do they have the do they have the looks and body, right? And I just feel like utilizing them in this way doesn't really fully unlock their full potential. You could argue, of course, that rock in itself is still more of a niche genre than pop music, but it's not like the music as we've heard so far, right? We've only heard little excerpts of it, but it seems that they are still going for a very heavy and very hard-hitting style. So in that case, like, what's the main reason for utilizing these for you? Or is it maybe the case that the producer really only has his eyes on Nanami and is just purely trying to just trying to get them together as part of like a set deal, right? A package deal, right? That could also be possible. And if it does develop into that sort of situation, I would be kind of interested to see how that story plays out as well. It's just that as it is, the setting as it is, right, doesn't really make too much sense to me. Like, obviously you would try to want to package it in some way. Like some great female rock bands that, again, the two favorites that I mentioned before, Bandmate and Guitar Spin. Like, these two, they have a certain gimmick to their playing as well. Bandmate, obviously, their whole theme is the maid aspect, and when they initially started out, they were also more of a band that was being produced rather than more of an authentic band, right? Sure, the musicianship was already there, they had the skills, they had the chops, but they mainly sang and played music written for them by others, and it was only later on they kind of sort of found their own voice and started their own songwriting. So that's obviously a case of that, but they still keep this sort of made gimmick because it draws in people and it works. They've kind of made it into their own identity. Guitar Spin as well. So their initial entire spiel was this super high energy, like bouncing around the stage like crazy, like doing guitar spins and flips, bass spins, all that kind of stuff, right? And even now they still, like, they even have like sort of backup dancers, if you will, within the band, and it goes into like this really high intensity, high performance, high energy performance, which I do love, and that kind of works for them as well. But then of course you also have other bands whose appeal is maybe more of their story, or in a certain way, perhaps also because of their looks as well. Like, if we are going to be talking about so-called idol bands, right? Two bands that instantly come to my mind are, let me think, Lavender. I think Lavender and Silent Siren, right? These two. Lavender. I kind of forgot like what their name was. Basically, the group that was formed from former Morning Musume members, right? And so they were originally idols. They decided to form a band by themselves, and achieved a decent amount of popularity. And then I believe Real also was kind of sort of like that as well. Silent Siren are composed of four girls who were originally like fashion magazine models, like reader models, not like actual model, but they had their own followings and whatnot, doing their stuff on a per per project basis for the magazine. So they would be considered a little bit more of an idol band aspect. And as this idol band aspect, obviously they need to they have the looks, right? They have that sort of, you know, that kind of interaction level, right? They're definitely not like, you know, rock bands are kind of like cool people, right? They don't take shit from anyone, and they just, you know, they don't really have this sort of lots of interaction, lots of talks in the middle, whereas these idol bands, that's important to them, you know, interacting with the crowd and whatnot. But at the same time, right, these two bands still fully play their own stuff, and some even compose their own stuff as well. So having this sort of like fake band playing, I honestly don't think it really flies in the Japanese market. The only the only kind of unit that I feel sort of fits into this is actually derived from idol groups instead. So you might be an idol group, and then you sort of take on this sort of girl band act, if you will. And the one that instantly comes to my mind is an idol group called Banjanaimon. So literally their unit name is called, this idol group's name is We Are Not a Band. And yet, even though that's their name, they play, you know, fake play instruments in their music videos, in their performances and whatnot, and that kind of works for them as well, just as a sort of a show instead. But they are first and foremost an idol unit, so the fans know, they know that they're not really supposed to really have any skills at playing, and it's more sort of like a performance aspect of it. If you are instead a band and then you decide to airplay, I honestly think that doesn't really fly with a lot of people. You know, have there been bands that try to mix choreography and playing at the same time? Sure. For a lot of the bands that I've mentioned here, they actually do more or less kind of have simple choreography, like a track spin. They have great choreography. When they're playing, they can play in lockstep. They headbang in lockstep and whatnot, and you know, they move around the stage in a certain manner that's predefined, right? So there's that kind of thing. Like the Seiyu girl brand, Puppin Party, they also have this sort of choreography as well, where they sometimes, you know, it's a more simpler version, like swaying back and forth in time or locking steps in tune with the playing. Like that's kind of a deal with this as well. The most famous example that I can think of is a band that's now disbanded, called Rurirori, who were formerly known as Himekara. So their entire spiel was that they could do both at the same time. Like but their take on it was kind of interesting. So they would play their songs and whatnot, and then after a certain amount of time, you know, they would put their instruments down, put on a backing track, and then start dancing around and whatnot. And then after dancing around, they'd go back and then start to pick up their instruments and start playing again. So not really fake playing, and it's they make a clear define. They make a clear line between like when they're actually playing versus when they're dancing. But that kind of had its own appeal for a certain amount of time, but like I said, they're disbanded, so obviously it didn't really go that far. But anyways, what I'm trying to say here is I'm not sure if this kind of setting really makes too much sense, both from the producing perspective, like why would he want to produce a unit like this, and also from their own popularity perspective, like would a group like this really get big if you know, the fans know that they're actually airplaying, and you know, what they're playing, obviously, like being only a free piece band, they can't really play the sort of really complicated melodies or the complicated arrangements that we have heard a little bit in the previous 2 or 3 episodes, right? So I don't know, I just have a big question mark in regards to this. And if they were going to go with more of a, okay, fronted by an idol unit but still having like hard music in the background, you know, the most popular example, the most famous example right now would probably be Baby Metal, right? And for the record, I don't consider them the same as female rock bands. That would require the members actually playing. Baby Metal is more of a female-fronted act, if you will, that happens to have really good band members playing with them as well. So that's one example. Another example I love very much is Passcode. They are also an idol unit, but featuring like great like super tight rock playing as well, and also having a mix of electronic elements into it as well. Like I love them. So though that kind of works, right? But this particular aspect, I don't know, man. I don't really think it can fly that well. Now, obviously, beyond this, there's the other aspect of, okay, maybe this, the story is clearly them being together as high school, in high school, as high school girls, and then eventually making their big debut, trying to go to Tokyo to realize their big dream, right? Now that obviously could also be a sort of reference. The most prominent example would have to still be Scandal, right? Their success story, I highly, how can I say this? It's gonna be really hard to replicate their success story. I feel like they were both a production of their own hard work, and they also were kind of lucky in that they were in that environment. It was a perfect environment to have this big boom as well. So it's sort of like a combined production of the time. But I feel like it's really, really hard to replicate that success nowadays. Even when there is still a pretty thriving girl band scene in Japan. Like, for instance, the more recent one that I know of that has a similar sort of concept, like high school girls forming together as a band, and then eventually being even kind of famous while they were still a high school band, and then making their major debut. Girls rock band Kakume, or Girls Rock Band Revolution, now known as Trident. They are also a prominent example, and probably the best example I can think of in the past 3-4 years, if you will. So, take of that as you will. But even then, like, I guess I never really looked too much into if they changed their music and whatnot. Like, Scandal, definitely, I don't think they changed their music that much. Girls band Kakume, to be honest, I'm not as familiar with them as I should be. Like, there's a few songs I know of, but yeah, I don't know if that's a specific sort of reference to anything, or that's more of a general sort of reference to bands as a whole, rock bands as a whole, and the difference between doing what you love versus doing what sells, right? Yeah, so I guess in the end of the day, to me, there's still a lot of this that I don't think completely makes sense from a success perspective or whatnot. But maybe that's diving a little bit too deep into this. Maybe that's not exactly the whole point of this story or whatnot. But as should be obvious to this point, 9 episodes in, I do love to do a lot more of this more kind of in-depth discussion or this sort of like analysis of the situation here, right? So, just for anybody who is interested in this as well, I highly recommend you guys to check out the Japanese female rock band scene. To me, it is the best in the world. There are so many good female bands there doing all kinds of genres. If you want metal, you got metal, like metal, I can recommend something like Love Bites. If you want hard rock, go with Bandmate. If you want something more pop oriented, like Silent Siren, like Scandal, Pop and Party. If you want something more I guess symphonic inspired, Roselia, I guess you could argue. But yeah, just check it out if you guys are interested in this kind of thing. And obviously, like I said, if you just want to see like attractive girls dancing around, putting on a performance with a more rock inspired performance behind, I think probably the entire internet knows about Baby Metal already. But beyond that, there's actually some other pretty good acts as well. Take a look into Pasco, take a look into Banjo Naimon, and yeah, that's, I guess, all I have to say about this. What is there anything else to mention at this point? Obviously, I'm not going to comment too much on their decision or Nanami's decision or whatnot. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, if you really do feel it would be better if you go back to your roots and try to do something, I feel like there's multiple ways to go about this, right? Like, talk to your other band members. Like, if you guys are truly friends and band members and whatnot, you can still like just say screw it all and just go, right? If that is what you want, just do it. Like, you don't own anything to the people behind you. They earn a salary regardless, right? You could argue that, hey, they're a team, there's a lot of money behind them, lots of people working hard to produce them and whatnot. They earn their salaries as is. They earn their salaries, right? It's not really a case of, you shouldn't really have your life defined by the people working behind them. Like, obviously they would be appreciated, but it's, if they can't produce you, their resources will be put into other use as well. So don't feel bad about that part. And then there's also another way to go about this, which is to do your own solo projects, right? Do your own side projects. That's also a common theme in a lot of this kind of scenario as well, right? Obviously, it would kind of depend on the on the producer and the labels, would they be willing to do this? But especially considering the fact that they perform anonymously, without revealing their faces and with a completely different style and whatnot. I feel like none of you could probably get away with it, having another career just as a singer-songwriter and whatnot. Though obviously there would be some conflict of interest, like what would you more focus on, etc., etc. But I feel like there are solutions to this problem, I think, is what I mostly want to say here. Alright, so that was kind of like a huge tangent on something else, but as you guys might guess, this is a topic that I am quite passionate about in girls rock bands and whatnot, so kind of going into another territory here. And if any of you do are able to listen to these recommendations and find something you like, well, that would obviously make my day. One last thing. The producer for the girls, right? The producer for Azalea, I am positive that is a reference, or at least a parody of another character, but I can't remember right now, like whether real life or not. I kind of feel like I've seen that character in anime or manga before as well, like that specific look. I just can't remember right now, so if you guys know, please do tell me. And on that note, I guess that's it for now. Thank you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.